storylines and all that stuff. But to get to something a little more specific would be Superman, Man of Steel.
There you go.
I mean, the movie, the new one with Henry Cavill, Superman doesn't kill, and he kills Zod. He doesn't lock him in the Phantom Zone. They didn't get that elaborate into explaining too much of everything either. So it's whatever it is, a lot of people had a theory that they were activating a Justice League Dark scenario. That's why when you said they were doing a horror concept, that could be similar in nature to a Justice League Dark, because Constantine is DC, and he fights ghouls and demons that rip bodies apart, horror scenes. So, and then Doomsday in aspect, in the Batman versus Superman, looked close, but not really. The thing that makes me the maddest about a lot of these is they explain shit too fast. And, I mean, it's a good movie. It's action-packed. But it's so hard to follow the storyline. Like, well, how does he know that person? Why does that matter? What the fuck just happened? Because if you don't know, it doesn't entirely make a lot of sense.
Right, but I guess they are trying to keep it, for the common viewer that doesn't read the comic books or might know the lore.
Yes, and I got, a few comic book fan friends who will straight up hate it because of that. And then there's people like me who, that was a great movie. Yes, it was not identical, but the movie itself was really good. They did a good job. They portrayed it correctly. These things, that power, this and that, they, went with it. Obviously they left out a lot. A lot wasn't explained. A solid example of that is the Harry Potter books compared to the movies.
Oh, yeah.
When if you see the movies first, you don't really notice you miss shit. But I read the books after I saw all the movies, and I was like, that all makes fucking sense now. Like the veil was lifted on questions I didn't know I entirely had.
Do you think they did that on purpose? Do you think they made the movies so that you would go read the books?
It's a time crunch thing. Well, yes and no. I mean, that's one of the things you can do, but it's one of those things that when you're making a movie, you're not going to put every little side story. But when you're making a book, you're trying to make someone draw an image in their head to play out the scenario. And without these little details that you could easily see, like a scar or something like that in a movie, you need to break that down, which then you would give a little backstory. But in the movie, they would have a scar. You don't need to know why. There's a scar on their face. But,
right.
in a book, you could elaborate on these little things. But like the whole thing with, like, spoiler alert, like Dudley, the conflict there, and with his aunt and uncle, the serious black scene where he just goes through a veil, they don't explain it in the movie at all. They touch it, and it's gone. And if you miss the sentence, you didn't hear it, you're like, how the fuck, why the fuck, and why can't they get him back? But if you read the book, you're like, I know what it is, now it makes sense, that's what happened, shouldn't have did that, I get it.
Do you wish you would have read the books first? Overseeing the movies first?
I think if I read the books first, I probably would have still saw the movies, because then I would have been a fan right away. Because right. I came into the movies going, I fucking love magic. I love stuff like that. So I knew after the first movie, and they showed proper disapparitions and, spell casting and stuff, and all those scenarios. I mean, there were little spots that nobody explained, which was kind of a whatever, but if you didn't know, they were kind of like Easter eggs too, which
right.
were just hilarious, which I'm not going to elaborate on right now, but
Okay.
That could be something we do in the future, is, explain and talk about the Harry Potter books in some manner or shape or form.
Yeah, because that's not necessarily comic, and this is superpowers, and they do have some sort of power.
Oh, yes. I mean, we could say Star Wars, too. It's a power, it's the Force, but it's not what we're about today.
Right, we're in the general description area.
So,
well,
all right, bring us back.
I want to talk about the time that I tried to create a comic book, and in no way did I ever get to a point where it was in art form. It was all planning. I had taken a deck of cards, and I tried to make a character for every single card in the deck. Each person had different powers, but they also had a negative side effect to their powers. I had backstories for all of them, and all these are on like little index cards that I made. I used a random name generator to create all the characters' names. Some were sisters, some were brothers, some were like 4 of them were family, and I really didn't know how to piece it all together. But I mean, when you try to develop a comic book or something and you try to get way, way, way too deep and you're doing it by yourself, it can be kind of difficult, that's for sure.
Especially in the beginning. Real quick, have you ever heard of the Royal Flush?
No.
They are a family group. I mean, some are like not quite cyborgs, but like an android or whatever. But they emphasize the poker cards of a royal flush. There's a king, there's a queen. Ace can manipulate its structure almost on a nanotech scale. So like maybe not the same thing you were doing, but off the aspect of playing cards, that would be something you could look at.
At one point, I was like trying to make the 2 Joker cards like the top tier of entities, that they're not exactly, they don't have any powers, but they have created all these cards and all these people with their powers. Like they were the mass, and I was going towards like Aces high. So the Aces have like multiple powers, and they're literally just trying to bring these groups together, and then I was going to maybe have a war between the Aces. You know what I mean? And they all have their groups of people that they've sought out and picked them, from their card. I don't know. It could have went somewhere. It didn't. It's been a while since I even touched on it.
There's still time. That sounds fun.
If any viewers have any ideas to branch off that idea, I mean, I still have all the characters and stuff. I can even have a podcast where I explain some of them, because some of them are really they're funny. Some of the powers just are pointless powers, for sure. Where their negative side effect overpowers the fact that they have powers in the first place.
Very cool. Or our listeners.
Yes.
Our viewers or listeners. It depends. If you're listening on YouTube, you could possibly be viewing it.
I did have someone today message and say that they love the podcast and stuff, and they are tuned in right now, so shout out to you. Yeah.
Hey, welcome.
So our next topic is we're gonna dive really deep into this one, okay? We're gonna dissect every single piece of Batman's superpowers.
Money!
Oh, well, that was quick.
And done.
And done.
You can buy all the hot tubs.
Which, literally, it's a quote-unquote segue to my question is DC fails. I mean, what was your thoughts on Ben Affleck or Batfleck? Batfleck.
Real quick, I just want to say the word Martha was a big fail. I mean, she was great. That scene where they both said Martha was horrible. They could have... It didn't make sense. I got it. It did make sense in the aspect that both of their mother's name were Martha, but it didn't make sense why suddenly I should stop killing you. It all depends on the movie. I mean, I did not like the fact that he had guns. I think he looked good. I did like his armor. I think he did an okay Bruce Wayne. fairly decent Bruce Wayne. They never actually did too much on it, but I think him and Gal Gadot had good on-screen chemistry. Like they could actually, have dated or something like that. Kind of like Wonder Woman and Batman, and that's kind of a love triangle: Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, which is something we could delve into in a future time, also.
Quick question. I don't mean to throw you off track. Do you remember what movie it was when me and you first saw the Superman Batman logo on the billboard? Way before this was even like in process of being a movie.
Fuck. I do.
We might have to get back to it. But I remember our feeling when we saw that. We're like, no way. No fucking way. Really?
Yes, I Am Legend, I believe. Yeah. It was up in the back corner while he's walking through the town. But because I Am Legend, I believe, is a DC storyline, too. So it was one of those things,
Right, and I didn't even put those pieces together, because I never really got into, like, I Am Legend.
Well, it's kind of a fun movie. It's an interesting metaphor that a lot of people made that wasn't originally there. Survive for 30 years with or however long with your dog, and a woman shows up and you die the next week. But
well, let's get back to DC fails.
I'm just saying that's a quote.
Are there any other big fails in DC movies that you were like angry about or frustrated?
I like the energy that I can't remember the actor's name, who played Lex Luthor, but like when you're portraying a character and you're trying to make a proper adaptation from a comic, you can't. I mean, obviously you got to go with what hand you're dealt for human beings that exist at the moment, but when you're playing a character like Lex Luthor, you can't be a thin guy with hair.
Oh yeah, that's you take one look and you're like, that's not Lex Luthor.
I mean, I did like damn it, the Brandon Routh Superman Returns. I can't think of his name. I can think of every movie he's in, Unusual Suspects and fucking other stuff, but I can't think of what his name is. But the guy who played Lex Luthor in that was much better physique comparison-wise than the one they chose, if you're going similar to the original 1 through 4 movies, to the actor that played him there. But if you, like, how people do it nowadays is they're portraying it off of the comic book and off of the movies, or off of the, like, cartoons and stuff. And if you're going to do that, you can't go a completely different look. I mean, everyone was like, being PC about everything, including everything, every race and stuff. I have no problem with any of that. But if you're trying to make a exact replica adaptation of a comic book, then you need proper characters that look the part.
Exactly. Like Smallville's Lex Luthor, what'd you think about that adaptation?
They explained, okay, you want to talk about holes. That's a good one.
Yes.
I like Tom Welling. I think he did a great Clark Kent, younger Clark Kent. But and with how they knew each other, I mean, they did know each other high school-wise, a long time ago, because he knew Superboy. I did not like the fact that he couldn't fly unless he was like the evil Clark Kent, which they made into a Bizarro, which didn't make any sense how they did it. I didn't like how they blended so many things that had nothing to do and didn't correlate with the proper storyline of how it was. And now I'm geeking out in the moment, and I mean, anyone who with a proper anything could say, "Oh, it was fine." I mean, it worked, but
I mean, it was enjoyable to the non-lore fan.
Exactly, but if you know, then a lot of it didn't make any fucking sense.
Right. And that brings me to
some of the kryptonites they used. They like a couple were wrong how they used them. And it's like,
Really?
do your research, writers. Like, what are you doing?